Hello and welcome everyone to our very first Bloxcast for SEs for fiscal FY18. I want to thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. Again, my name is Nathan Mendelera and I'm the Global Partner Enablement Manager here at Infoblox. So as you know, Infoblox is the leader in the DDI space and is changing the face of security through solution offerings like Secure DNS. Your role in our partnership, of course, is crucial. And with this in mind, we've asked Chris to join us to present and demo how Infoblox technology is changing the market today and how you can immediately add value to your DDI and security offerings. With that, Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Let me just see if I can continue to share the presentation and we can get going.
Good.
So yes, can everyone see that?
Yes, looks great.
Check. Excellent.
All
Thank you,
set.
Rick. Cool. Well, welcome to everyone on the call. I'm actually based out of the UK, so it's nice and in the afternoon, and we have had a sunny day today, which is unusual for those that have visited the UK and would expect rain. But in the previous sessions that have been associated with this program, the very high-level introduction had been made to the three aspects of the Infoblox security solutions. What we're intending to do today is go into these in a little more depth. But along with these three solutions that we have built, obviously these fit into the whole SANS critical security controls. And so Infoblox can play in multiple areas within the security arena, especially with our expanded capabilities when we consider things like our network configuration and control management, and also things like our network discovery capabilities and our threat intelligence. So let's look at the first of these, which is the infrastructure protection solution. What is infrastructure protection? Actually, we really believe that this is a combination of actually having visibility of your network infrastructure, because you cannot secure what you don't know about, having the ability to understand your network infrastructure, to then be able to actually confirm that there are no vulnerabilities within the network itself. And then ultimately, it's about protecting the services that are actually running on your network, whether that is the individual components or whether that is your core network services, and in particular DNS and DHCP, which is obviously where Infoblox steps in. So from an Infoblox perspective, we actually enable the ability to solve all of these key problems. The first of which we mentioned was visibility. And this for us is about actually having valid IP address management capabilities that give you a view of your whole IP space. But it's going beyond that spreadsheet capability and actually turning this into what we call authoritative IPAM that actually truly gives you visibility of what is on the network. And so this is where network discovery comes in. By actually communicating with the network, we can actually understand what subnets are configured on the network, what hosts and devices are connected to the network, what devices make up the network infrastructure, be they physical or virtual, and bring all of that information into that single IP address management database and give you a single pane of glass to actually have complete visibility of your IP infrastructure. And obviously we do this in both passive and active ways, because things like DHCP fingerprinting also come into play here to know what's on your network from a device perspective. Once we have discovered your network infrastructure, then this is where the network change and configuration management capabilities of Infoblox NetMRI come into play, that enable us to actually understand what those devices are, what software versions they're running, what their configuration is, and then actually look at applying policy with respect to security, whether this is compliancy to standards such as PCI, or whether this is actually from PCerts, for instance, that you are running either older firmware and identify the key components in the network that may be vulnerable to attack. When it comes to configuration, the automation capabilities also enable us to actually fix in an automated way some of those key aspects, or at least raise an alert and a work package for confirmation so that they can actually go and action that immediately in an automated manner. With authoritative DNS and internet-facing DNS and DNS caching for resolution out into the big bad internet, obviously we have our strong DNS capabilities here. But when we talk about this in terms of infrastructure protection, we're really looking at how you protect your DNS infrastructure from attack. This may actually even be internal to the network, where a rogue device could actually create an internal denial of service against your DNS or even your DHCP infrastructure. And so this is where our platform of the advanced DNS protection actually comes into play and allows us to prevent a denial of service, bringing down the actual service itself. Similarly, with internet resolution, this is around being able to protect the cache from things like cache poisoning and insertion of bad data so that you are confident that you're going to the correct destinations. Once we have all this information, and especially once we've got this in visibility in our authoritative IPAM, the other element of infrastructure protection is everyone has a layered security approach anyway, with lots of security ecosystem players. And what we want to do is actually enrich the environment with the data that we have. An example here is if there is attack against, for instance, the external firewall, and we know that's coming from a particular IP address, we can actually enrich the data of the alerts going to the SIM by actually looking that IP address up using our threat intelligence to see if we have any information that can help you prioritize that capability. Or similarly, from an ecosystem perspective, we can actually tell a vulnerability scanner, for instance, that a new IP address or new device has come onto the network to enable an automated scan rather than having to do periodic scans across the infrastructure. And very quickly, this actually gives you a high-level overview of how the infrastructure sits within, with the discovery capabilities into the protected internal DNS and DHCP and authoritative IPAM, with the network infrastructure communicating to the network and ensuring that it's compliant to the security policies, by ensuring that we have the protected authoritative DNS from an outside perspective with our advanced DNS protection, and obviously similarly with our recursive caching. And all of this can be supplemented with our threat intelligence into the security ecosystem. So from an infrastructure protection perspective, Infoblox is the only vendor that actually protects against the widest range of external and internal DNS-based attacks. And that's thanks to our capabilities within the advanced DNS protection platform, in combination with things like DNS firewall and active trust, but actually giving you that visibility with the authoritative IPAM, and ultimately we're the only DDI vendor that also has the ability to manage your network configuration and those devices to ensure that they match your security policies and any vulnerabilities in the network vendors' firmware and visibility. From next steps from your guys, if you were interested in the infrastructure protection, actually, obviously, we can now do advanced DNS protection trials because we have virtualized that and it's available on the virtual platform. And as with NetMRI, our NCCM capabilities, again, you can encourage the discussions with your customers and actually bring them in to actually evaluate our product suite there. Security PCAP assessments, if you can capture data going to their DNS servers, whether that's internal or external, and you'll see this is a common theme with all of them. We can obviously help with actually replaying those PCAPs against our technology and help show whether or not there are, or in that actual PCAP, security interesting indicators of compromise within that security seat. Moving on to the next element, we look at data protection and malware mitigation. And I think it's becoming very well known now that DNS is actually a critical element within the cyber kill chain. But there are two sides to how DNS is utilized to actually leverage it in a security manner or in a nasty way from a hacker perspective. The first of these is from a data exfiltration. Because security infrastructure has traditionally not been particularly good at analyzing DNS, it gets let through out to the internet from within the network. Whether that's via a proxy or direct, doesn't really matter. And DNS tunneling has been used to actually exfiltrate data from organizations. And this might be financial data. In terms of a bank, we want to prevent DNS being utilized to allow credit card information, for instance, or even transaction information leakage from a bank. It could be intellectual property, such as a movie or information regarding games, which is, again, something you may have seen in the press. Or it could actually even be around the fact that actually another organization is allowing data to come in, but one of the aspects is the second half of this, where DNS and DNS tunneling capabilities or exfiltration is where advanced persistent threats or malware actually utilize DNS in all aspects of the cyber kill chain. And this is everything from actually deploying and actually infecting the machine in the first place, where a user has gone to a bad site, to the command and control or deploying payloads into the infrastructure, and therefore allowing you to actually communicate with an endpoint to enable the malware to actually, or advanced persistent threat, to actually take action within an organization. And so, as I mentioned previously, although defense in depth is critical within an organization, the traditional point solutions where security has played, and this particularly is around firewalls or even IDS, IPS, in general, do not actually address DNS at all, but actually certainly do not have the effective capabilities to address all the threats that could be utilized over the DNS path. And so we actually have to start having those conversations where actually we need to fill that DNS and bring the security point within the core of the infrastructure and actually get true depth in our security stance. And an example here is, you may be saying, what about next-gen firewalls? Well, next-gen firewalls, yes, they can have some capability with regards to the security threats. But even if you look at, for instance, the reputational data capabilities with regards to DNS on one of those next-gen firewalls, typically they can cope with about 150,000 reputational pieces of information. As an example for one of the vendors out there, when you start bringing this into your core and into your actual DNS DDI infrastructure, Infoblox, for instance, not only is capable of providing around, and it's a fluctuating number, of course, around 6 million indicators of compromise, but actually handle that on the DNS layer to ensure that with the additional capabilities that we have that we'll discuss in a second, actually enable us to truly address DNS security threats. And so Infoblox is very well positioned in the core of the network to actually truly become a disruptor of that cyber kill chain, whether that is blocking the infection of malware or enforcing and recognizing communication with command and control, and therefore preventing that malware from actually being activated, or in the prevention of download of new payloads, for instance. And with our cloud capabilities as well, this means that actually it doesn't have to be users within your infrastructure. It can actually be users which are roaming by protecting their endpoints whilst they're on the road. From a data exfiltration, it's about recognizing bad endpoints in the first instance with reputational data, but actually going further and being able to actually understand the tunneling technologies and also whether there is data being sent over the actual DNS communication path. And ultimately, because we have the visibility of all the IPs within the network, when we are the policy enforcement piece, we can provide enriched information about that IP. And if it's actually another end device that is determining a problem within the cyber kill chain, then actually, again, we can further enrich that data as part of the security ecosystem to help them prioritize and put context around the events. And so we play in the capabilities of actually being able to prevent that communication, prevent data exfiltration, but then back this up with the ability to actually enrich the information by having our own threat intelligence capabilities. Through our threat intelligence data exchange, we allow you to investigate those threats from either our infrastructure or other infrastructure to ensure that you can actually take the appropriate action. And because we can utilize the threat intelligence data across your environment, it's not just for Infoblox devices. You can use this on firewalls, on proxies, and mail gateways. Then it actually gives us a unified capability to actually report this and enrich the data within the security ecosystem. And when it comes to data exfiltration, I mentioned reputational data before, but this is only ever going to allow you to detect bad knowns, data going to known bad sites. Sorry, and we have multiple governments using this, so we're very confident in the accuracy of our reputational information. The second element of our protection against data exfiltration is actually around being able to recognize specific tunneling technologies, and this is a signature-orientated method. So if someone is using iodine, for instance, as their DNS tunneling technology, our advanced DNS protection solution can immediately detect that and block the communication from that first packet. But not everyone is using well-known technologies here, and so actual DNS behavior is now really the crucial element to actually understand and protect against zero-day excess, whether that is data exfiltration or whether that is a piece of malware that is brand new out there and actually utilizing DNS to transfer data to whether that is actually exfiltrating data or communicating with its command and control. Watching that behavior of how the DNS queries and how the DNS queries are formed allows us to actually block and prevent that communication over the DNS path. And again, we do this for both on-premises and within the cloud. And the threat intelligence capability means that we actually have a single place that you can go to actually add additional contextual information about the indicators of compromise, about the threat actors, and how you have to react as an organization in terms of prioritizing this against other threats that you may be seeing or other incidents that you may be seeing within your infrastructure. And we're currently still the only vendor that actually uses all three of these mechanisms to actually prevent data exfiltration and understand and break the stream using real-time analytics. When you enhance this with our in-house capabilities and our threat intelligence data exchange platform, which is combining both the threat intelligence data that Infoblox researches and provides, but actually combines third parties as well, this gives us a huge amount of data that we can actually leverage to protect our customers. And from an ecosystem perspective, this is ever expanding capability, whether that's direct to other vendors or whether this is through our custom integrations through our REST API or standards such as Stix and Taxi. We can integrate with a large variety of ecosystem players. So again, we have the ability to provide trials and capabilities. So I encourage you to go and look for opportunities where you can enhance someone's security through Infoblox core network services, whether that's through on-premises and Active Trust and the threat intelligence data exchange, or out and using the Active Trust cloud that has these capabilities in. And lastly, the threat containment and operations solution. With today's landscape, I'm sure you're aware that it's pretty complex out there from a security perspective. And everyone wants that Ferrari of security capabilities within an organization. But actually, today, we're in that position where they're predominantly point solutions, or you're tied into a single vendor, and actually all you have is the bits and pieces that you are then responsible for bringing together to actually get the security that you really want. And frequently this is still impossible. And we can see this from the fact that actually we still live in this siloed world. Actually, even within a security, you'll have firewall guys, the web proxy guys, the mail security guys, let alone the silos of network and server teams that might have some of the information that would enable security to make more rapid decisions. But combine this with the fact that there is not sufficient information to actually prioritize or have that context for a security incident on the network, really actually dramatically slows the manual processes in particular. And this is where we want to change and optimize the capabilities. And this starts with the threat intelligence optimization, which allows us to actually, with our high quality data, whether that's from just Infoblox or the multiple vendors and our marketplace partners, to actually give you high quality data that is able to be used across your whole infrastructure, not just in Infoblox. And this gives you consistent, timely, high quality information that you can leverage to actually increase the security across your whole ecosystem. But also leverage that information to make and prioritize priority decisions and add context to an incident once it is raised by one of the elements within the security ecosystem, and cross the boundaries of those silos, especially as Infoblox allows us to orchestrate the data by understanding what's on the network, and actually even allow exchange of data, for instance, between Cisco and McAfee, who would never actually exchange it directly. We can actually act as an endpoint that both are communicating with, and we can communicate and start to automate the process as well when security incidents arise. Not just in terms of enriching the data and therefore allowing you to have a more rapid triage, for instance, within the network, but actually start to even automate some of the processes, such as quarantining a rogue device because it's hit a particular security incident, be that through our DNS firewall, for instance, or whether that is that we've learned something from another part of the ecosystem. And so that first element is really that ability to have that high quality feed from a single vendor, so it's easy to manage and bring into your infrastructure, but leveraging the marketplace of multiple vendor feeds, because no one actually has all the information. And so we can increase the accuracy, increase the capabilities, but still bring this in a consolidated manner onto your security ecosystem. And that means that we eliminate conflicts between sources and doesn't give you vendor tie-in with respect to each of the actual specific ecosystem elements. And using the threat intelligence data exchange allows us to do this, and actually allows us to look for particular types of malware or particular indicators of compromise, such as an IP, a web address, or a domain name, and bring those out into multiple formats, such as CSV or sticks and taxi, XML, JSON, or RPZ, if this is going to be used on the Infoblox platforms. And obviously, this enables you to use it across your security infrastructure or bring it into your SIEM for enrichment. Plus the fact we have Dossier that actually allows us to not just make use of the data that's within Tide, but actually also other malware information sites and Google to reduce the time to investigate and enrich that information. And the APIs allow us to fully automate all of these capabilities as well. And enrichment is actually also about that authoritative IPAN data, especially when it's combined with our full discovery capabilities. It means that if an IP address comes in from a firewall or a web proxy, then actually when the SIEM can reach out to us and give the context of where that client is, where on the infrastructure, which switch port, what type of device is it, and so decisions can be made more quickly. And ultimately, with the network automation capabilities, it may be that actually you can even shut down that port from the same place. And that comes to that whole orchestration element with utilizing our APIs, and that's both inbound and outbound. So we, for instance, can notify Qualys or Rapid7 that a new IP address is on the network to ensure that vulnerability scan is done. Or we can see that something bad has occurred, a DNS firewall hit, for instance, and actually then inform Cisco through PX Grid as well that they can quarantine this device and automate that process with the Cisco Network Access Control. Or actually inform all of the Carbon Black elements so that none of the other endpoints suffer from the same vulnerability, whilst Carbon Black can then actually contain that process on the individual machine. So this is all about the security ecosystem, and you'll forgive the reference, I am from across the pond, so actually we consider ourselves sort of Switzerland, i.e. neutral, and so we'll happily exchange that data between these parties as well. And so it's that ability to actually apply threat intelligence across the infrastructure, across the ecosystem, with our high quality data from our in-house teams and high capability for integration into the ecosystem through standards, through individual vendor integrations, and through our APIs, both inbound and outbound. And again, we have those capabilities around being able to show you or help you demonstrate these to your customer base. And again, with all of the aspects here, if you can get data out from a PCAP, for instance, we can play this against our systems and see whether we can identify weaknesses within their environment. And so hopefully that actually gives you a little bit more flavor into each of the three solutions that we're trying to provide with the Infoblox security portfolio. And assuming we have time, we'll try and kick off a demo of some data exfiltration.
Yes, we do. We're in good shape for time.
Excellent. So let me sort my sharing out once more. I notice there haven't been any questions yet.
Not yet. Please feel free to type your questions in. Chris will continue to present and will not be interrupting for questions unless he sees something tied in at the moment. Go ahead and type them into the text box, press send, and we'll get them either while he's demonstrating or when he concludes and we have a Q&A.
Thank you, Rick. So for a quick demonstration of data exfiltration from my home network here, actually, I'm going to use our tool, which is has the name DEX for data exfil, and this is our demo portal. And one of the things you can do is actually register here yourselves. It's available to even allow customers to register to actually attempt an exfiltration within their network infrastructure. So I'm going to log in here myself, and I'm just praying to the gods of live demos. So with DNS tunneling and data exfiltration, what we're doing is we're taking what is potentially an infected client that is utilizing DNS to communicate to a DNS server, whether that's direct the first hop or whether that's via a proxy. It doesn't actually matter, a web proxy, for instance. But it's the DNS element that is being used to encode that data, send it to a target rogue-owned DNS server out on the internet, and then they can use those packets to reconstruct the actual data. So we're going to perform and utilize this tool by going to the data exfiltration tools, and I'm an old Unix guy, so I'm going to use the script decoder in this case to actually transmit a file over an unprotected DNS service. So I'm actually going to pick a picture of myself, and we're going to actually, which you saw on the front screen in the presentation, and we're going to actually try and transmit that over DNS.
Chris, just a second. For some of you who are watching this, it may be that the window seems a little small. If you click on the view options at the top of the presentation screen and click original size, that will let you see it the same size it is on Chris's screen, and you can drag the window corner, the lower corner of it, so you can make a bigger window. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Rick. So as I said, I'm an old Unix guy, so I'm going to use the Unix shell script here. But you can see there are options for both Perl and Windows PowerScript here. And if I can switch to my Unix prompt here, I'm just going to take the script that it's generated, and you can see this is just straightforward shell. I'm in the directory where that file is, and when I hit return, we can see that that's actually going to do some queries, and in this case, that's going to hopefully be using my default DNS server. So whilst that is, which is an unprotected service, so whilst that's going, I'm going to regenerate these scripts by specifying an IP in here. If I can type the correct IP and regenerate a new version of that script, and we'll utilize that shortly. But within the demo portal, I can now go to the transfer of messages file, and you can actually see that it is transmitting and the packets over DNS, and we can actually see that they're still going in the window. If we want to look at this from a port sniffer perspective, we can see those queries. Now, even though the response is no such domain, that's the end DNS server saying there's no such domain. So these queries have hit that rogue server. That rogue server is decoding them. And we can actually see, if we do a refresh, we've already received a nearly quarter of that packet that's been, that image that is being rebuilt at the other end. So we'll let that go ahead. I've picked the slightly smaller image this time. And whilst that is running, we can see the script still going quite happily. I'm going to bring up a new window, and now we're going to try and transfer via this alternate DNS server. So this is now an Infoblox name server that is actually running our threat protection capabilities, and this is the Gridmaster that's actually running this. And we can see, if we go to data management, we have threat analytics running. And although there's a whitelist in here, this is not going to touch the whitelist. I have a response policy zone that the threat analytics is actually going to update. So I'm going to actually remove that item from the list. So we now have a completely blank threat analytic response policy zone that threat analytics is going to feed. So let's just have a quick check. Now we're almost halfway there on the one that's going to succeed. So let's kick off this second set of queries that is going to go to my threat analytics engine. And so this is using that behavioral capabilities. And again, we're running this very quickly, and we can see that actually we're getting a queries going through. And we'll be able to see that in the TCP dump as well. We've got two sets of queries going through. But let's go back to our DEX portal and do a refresh. So now we can see there's two sets of that image actually being sent through. We're doing quite well with the one packet that's actually most of the way through now, but you can see that the other one, we're only on 22 packets that have actually gone through. So let's see what's happening on the Gridmaster here and refresh this response policy zone. Well, actually what you can see is that threat analytics has taken the information of the domain, marked this as a threat of data exfiltration, and has actually applied this to the response policy zone, and now we're enforcing the policy against that. And so we won't actually see the other number increase from that 22. And we'll just give it a chance to finish that other one. But we can obviously go and look at the logs, and we can identify in the syslog that we have DNS tunneling detected, and that has, we then have the actual client being blocked. And that information can obviously be enriched on the SIM. So let's refresh. We're getting pretty close. I'm going to click on the image, and you can see that it's hopefully, yeah, it's a little slow in downloading that. We'll let that finish. But you can certainly see that the one that was going through the DNS server that was applying the threat analytics is just stuck at that 22. And if we look at the shell script, you can actually see that one's finished. So it's completed sending, but actually only 22 packets were received. So we very quickly understood that that was data being exfiltrated over DNS and blocked it using the response policy zone. We've completed sending this one as well. So hopefully that's now been fully reconstructed. So we can see the successful one. I don't know whether the image is actually going to download. This might be a little bit slow, but it has rebuilt an image, and that's supposed to be a nice smiley picture of me. But that's where the gods have obviously let me down. But we can see that it was completely transferred as opposed to the very small amount. So that concludes the demonstration. I encourage you to actually try this in your own environments. and also your customer environments, because a lot of people don't believe that you can exfiltrate data. You can use the text, so I can actually also do a quick, this is a test, and you can get someone to write loads of random characters or whatever it may be, point them at a DNS server within the environment, and again you have this broken down into NS lookups so that you can run this from the command line and see if that text is received. And you'll see that that text would actually appear in the lower half. So this is very quick and simple to use, whether it's in a basic text or actually try and send a file. And there you can see that data has appeared in the bottom, just using 3 DNS lookups in this case. So we will be sending out some links tomorrow in an email that you'll receive from the Zoom meeting that actually include a load of other demonstration videos that demonstrate each of the elements of the security portfolio, and you'll see some other examples of data exfiltration, protecting your DNS servers from denial of service, network configuration, and actually also the threat optimization capabilities. So thank you very much.
Chris, you mentioned about setting this up. Since we've seen the result, which was that how much of the DNS queries were blocked once identified, and that's a very dramatic contrast that is shown right there in that screen.
Yes.
Of the result. Now, we have people on this call who are SEs and more technically minded sales reps. Just give us an idea briefly of how they go about setting this up with a customer, and what do they need from the customer to do that? I saw you mentioned the PCAP reports. What do they need, and how do they go about setting up this demo?
So the first thing is to actually go to the DEX portal. As we showed at the beginning, there's the register button, and you just need your email address and a couple of other details that enable you to create an account. Once you have actually gone through the terms and conditions and accepted those, because obviously there's potentially an element of risk here if someone was to use it to actually exfiltrate real data, then you can just come to the tools, and all you need is either a customer that has direct internet resolution because there is a nice tool description, you have the capabilities here, and it will actually, with the web page, with the text decoder, it will actually also work through a proxy, but typically you are actually going to utilize the customer's DNS service to exfiltrate that data. So all you will need is the IP address of the DNS server that the client you're doing this from to actually run the scripts against it. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. And so actually, when you saw me do the first demonstration, I didn't even, with the script decoder, I left this blank, and that just says use the default resolver for the client. So actually, most of the time for this test, you don't even need to know what the DNS server is. You actually just can point this at the DNS server that the client does, that talks to naturally.
Yeah, Sylvain, one of our attendees asked the question, is the demo linked to a particular DNS or not? I think you just answered that.
Well, so certainly not to a particular DNS server, but obviously we have some registered domains, but we are using multiple domains, and when you look at the script, in fact, you see that we're actually creating pseudo-random subdomains as well, and this will change. So if I generate that script again, so maybe I want to transfer the file but with a different DNS server, or try the transfer again, when I generate the script, you can see that the domain name has changed again. And we're keeping an eye on some of the services that have tried to just block the top level domain, for instance.
I heard in a recent demo that Ingmar was doing that it's a good idea to advise if you're running a test on a DNS server within a customer's company to let the security people know that you're running this test, so that if they see something strange going on in traffic or that server response, they'll know what you're doing.
Yeah, obviously, when you are on a customer's site, you do need to ensure that you have the appropriate permissions in place to attempt this demo, because you are in effect using their infrastructure to exfiltrate data. Even if that data is innocuous data, you can't make those decisions. You need to make sure that the customer has completely agreed to this within their environment. And
we have a few minutes left, so if any of you have any questions, go ahead and type them in. We took care of the one that had come in, but we do have some more time now.
While we're waiting for another question to come in, Chris, I don't know, maybe if you could share your experience as far as what actually approaching a customer and actually kind of doing this demonstration. I don't know if you kind of have an example of what that was like and what that experience kind of is that you could share with the group.
yeah, I mean, one of the key things here is that we talked about the silos earlier, and when you're engaging with the customer, actually, we do need to make sure that we're having the conversations with not just the people that own the core DNS infrastructure, DDI infrastructure, but actually also the security teams. And that's one of the key things, is we can bring those guys together and understand their requirements for each other. But what we tend to find is that they're actually either skeptical and don't believe that you can exfiltrate data through their next-gen firewall, and that their service is rock solid, in which case this has always been a very good tool. Is, well, actually, can we have a go at trying to exfiltrate some data? And it might be a text file or a spreadsheet, but something they control. And it's very effective at that point to, I don't think I know of any failures in actually being able to perform some level of data exfiltration. And the look on their faces can be quite priceless at that point. But it's opens up their eyes, and this is why this has been such a powerful tool for us. Is this is so simple to do a demonstration on your customer site. Normally there is no problems in running this. I don't think we've had many challenges in getting agreement, even if it's been because we've had to schedule it with the security team, for instance, or even actually doing a demonstration and they said, no, we don't need to inform the security team. If they notice it, they can come and tell us, we'll handle that, that's not a problem. But actually it's that eye-opener that, well, actually, one, it's possible in most environments that aren't running Infoblox technology, and two, that actually the security teams also very, very, very rarely actually see any alerts to indicate that you've even done the test. Because that's one of the other elements, is if you have informed the security people that you're running this test, is always make sure that once you've run the test, that you get back in touch with them to see if they have actually found that this was an exfiltration attempt utilizing DNS. And most of the time that isn't the case. They haven't seen anything, and it has a large impact on customers and can open up the greater conversation and open up security to the conversations, not just about data exfiltration, but the whole security portfolio. Does that answer your question, Nathan?
Yeah, that's great. Rick, do we have any other questions?
There are no other questions have come in. Well done, Chris. Thank you very much. Brandon, you want to take us out?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks again, Chris. for a great presentation, and especially that
Pleasure.
demonstration. Hopefully this is valuable for all of our partners. Again, just want to thank everybody for attending today. It's an exciting time in the partner community at Infoblox. We're just relaunching our partner program. Some of you may have heard. So there'll be more exciting things coming along the way, especially from an enablement perspective, where we'll conduct more of these types of events, more in-person events, roadshow type of events, and we'll absolutely make sure that you guys get access to the recording and the materials, and as Chris mentioned, some links to some additional demonstrations. So look forward. We'll be back on our regular cadence for this Bloxcast next month, but I'm going to turn it over to Rick to give more details on upcoming Bloxcast.
Thanks, Brendan. Yes, we're back with you on the 7th of September, and this will be with the new Trinsic program, and we'll be explaining how that works and what that offers you in terms of some subscription opportunities as a different approach. So we will have the general webcast for that on the 7th for sales, and then as we did this time, an SE dive will happen the following week on the 14th for SEs, and that will give you some more information about how you as an SE can be involved in the selling process and really play your part. So watch for the reminder that's going to be coming out for that. That'll be coming to you a week before the events, and then the day before and an hour before in the usual cadence, and both for the sales and for the SE session. So also tomorrow you'll be getting the email that Chris referred to with the link to the DEX portal, and also links to 6 different YouTube videos that make it easy for you to see how to use this exfiltration setup and demonstrate it, and give you a step-by-step way to go through it. So thanks for being with us today, and thanks for learning more about Infoblox and how you can integrate Infoblox in your integrations that you're putting forward with your customers. We'll see you next time on the Bloxcast. Thanks for being with us today. Bye now.